Well, trying to get onto a routine of a schedule, I had forgotten. I forgot you guys were off last Monday, so we didn't do our press conference on a Monday. Some of us labor on Labor Day. No disrespect. I just so this caught me a little bit off guard. I thought we were Tuesdays. But no, I think obviously just recapping from last week, a little bit probably what I thought as I talked a little bit after the game. In particular, the first half, it was just not a very clean half of football. I think on both sides. Ultimately for the game, defensively, I think we had 11 series and only ended up with 2 3-and-outs maybe. And I think that's where some of that bigger difference came even in the first half. And then obviously offensively in the first half didn't play real clean, had 5 drives, really scored on 2 of them. Take away what you can't, the last 2-minute situation. I think we're probably not feeling great, but we're in a good position as you go into halftime to make some adjustments and come out and play the way we did the second half. So there's some real positives. I think we had 13 explosive plays, which was the most I think we've had since we've been here for the last few years. And so we were able to get the ball, move the ball around, create some things, made some good adjustments, and did some things in the second half to make things, obviously roll a little bit more. And it's amazing how the momentum of things can happen. But as you go back and look at it, I think Danny did a really good job. I think we only had a few incompletions, and those in particular might have been things that were rushed. And more open for him. But all in all, what we asked him to do, I think he did a really good job of and was happy after evaluating the game film and watching and seeing the decisions he made, where he threw the football, how he threw the football, with the exception, like I said, to a few decisions on, they weren't bad. I mean, obviously the play right before half that ended up getting intercepted. But I think the only other ones that come up is maybe some of the bubble throws out there that you would probably not want to throw. Other than that, he actually played a pretty clean game for us. So that's exciting that moving forward. I don't know a whole lot about Billy before you ask. It's a Monday. So we'll see as we continue to push forward in the week. But we'll get obviously prepared either way.
Just a quick one on Billy. Is he doing more physically as you've gotten further away from the injury, or where's he kind of at in terms of what he can do?
Yeah, I mean, he's throwing the ball around. He's here constantly getting treatments and things like that. I think it's going to be, where he really feels as we get later towards the week. Whether it's, we're going to have to protect Billy from himself. I know that at some point in time. I don't know when that is, but he's a guy that's going to be prepared and always wants to go.
Luke, so far, third down on defense has been pretty, successful for you guys. What have you seen in that regard? What kind of stands out to you in terms of what's kind of, fueling some of this early success?
Well, I don't have the stats. I know that obviously in week 1 we were really good. Last week, pretty darn good as well. I can think of a scramble here and there for one of the little bit longer ones. I think there's a combination. I think it's pretty easy to say we've got some edge rushes and we've got some depth. We can move some things and mix some things and get some guys in there that give us a chance to win some one-on-ones. I think that's where it starts with. It's also trying to figure out as you get into a game what's the best thing for you, right? Is it to bring 5? Is it to bring 6? Is it allowed to bring 4? Is twisting? Is going straight? So I think that as a combination of all those things together, giving us a better opportunity, a chance as we got into games to see what actually is working. We know right now the 4-man rush and the guys on the edges give us a little bit of a different dynamic, and I think that's where we start. But we've got to be able to mix some things up, and I think that's where the coaches have done a pretty good job of having a combination of bringing 4, 5, 6, and even at times just 3, and let them get guys off of spots.
Coach, you had talked about some of the explosives. Lance Mason had a couple of those big plays. Just how much can his speed and athleticism make an impact in the passing game?
I think there's a combination of things there for Lance. I think obviously not just his ability to run. I think that his ability to get open. I think he won on some man-to-man coverage stuff. He obviously made a play down the field on a deep ball that was right there down to the 1 or 2 yard line. He had one out in the open space where almost probably breaks one to maybe take that thing a lot further. I just think that there's a combination of things that Lance gives us an opportunity to use. And it's not just speed. It's not just ability to catch. His versatility, I think, at least makes him a little bit more difficult to say, hey, this guy isn't just in there to catch balls. He's really kind of grown since he's walked in the door here. He's kind of a complete guy right now, and so he's every bit as part of the blocking in the run game, at the point of attack, on pulls and counters and kickouts, as well as he is, I think, down the field in the passing game as well. So I think the best thing he's brought is versatility to us.
Hey, Luke, I know it's still very early, but a little more time to just go back and look at the film. What stood out about really that entire right side, those young guys that I know are very close, Colin Coverley, Emerson Mandel?
Yeah.
Where would you like to continue to see growth to?
Oh, there's no doubt. I mean, we know that that's what excites you, right? I mean, when you've got some young guys, it's obviously nerve-wracking as well, and but it's exciting too to see those guys, because you know that there's going to be a growth every day, every week. Sometimes you gotta live with some of those things, but I think we saw enough in last week's game to say, hey, this is what the future looks like, and those guys and their ability to work together is going to be a really good thing. And so there's definitely some mistakes. I think that anytime you have some new guys in positions, I think there were some mistakes to the other side too, where you got two really veteran guys that just haven't played side by side a whole lot. So I think that's the unique thing about the offensive line. We talk about the defensive line and what do you like about what those guys is. It's the multiplicity. It's be able to move guys. The Daryl Peterson, they can play on the edge. He can play inside. He can play head up over the center. The thing about the offensive line is getting them into positions where they can get consistent. They can get a feel for one another. That's so much more about guys working in unison. And so, there was obviously some things we got to do a lot better on both sides of it. But I think for those young guys, there's just a lot of promise in the future of where we're headed.
Luke, you were asked about scheduling, non-conference scheduling last week, and you said you kind of got to do what's best for your team. Is the tricky part that answer might be different each year, right? Like sometimes you might.
Yeah, I think that's where you just got to look at it, right? I mean, and the thing about it is you're not scheduled. This isn't, I don't know basketball, but I think they can kind of, schedule a year out or even 6 to 8 months out from what I understand. That's not the case in football. So I think that, it's not an easy thing, but you got to look at it and say, hey, what's going to be best for us as a whole? We know this. The Big Ten is not like it's going to take a dip. I'm not saying that there couldn't be more teams in the Big Ten, who knows? But I can assure you there's not going to be less, and we're not going to lose any of the power that is in here right now. And so I just think that everybody's going to have to figure this thing out. I think the good thing is you see both conferences going to where we are with 9 league games. I think it's going to allow for some more consistency. There's not going to be any mandates, I'm sure, as we've seen in college football. Every time you think there's going to be some rule put in place, like everybody has to play X amount, I think you really just got to make sure, hey, what's going to be the best fit for us as we continue to move and grow what it is that we're doing.
I know there's a question mark if he's going to play, but when you face a receiver like Ryan Williams, just what does he do to a defense? Just you see the talent and the speed and everything, but what's he do to a defense when you're trying to cover a guy like that?
Well, it's a hard look to simulate. Let's just start there, because it's not like you've got a bunch of those guys that we can put in there to say, hey, we're going to simulate the speed. But his versatility, I think the way they move him around is where even seeing the growth from last year to game one. Again, we got to prepare like he's going to be there. I would assume that he's going to be there, but also you can put too much of a focus on things like that too. So I think there's a balance. It's not like the other guys are guys that you don't have to worry about, or guys you wouldn't like to some way somehow double cover or have some in and outs on. So I think you got to be able to do the things that you do, but you got to also be aware of the different things that in particular he brings.
Luke, I know there's been roster changes, there have been scheme changes, but is there anything that you see differently from your Wisconsin team, this year heading into Alabama compared to last year?
Yeah, there is. There's a lot of things. I think that hopefully first and foremost it has a lot to do with the team. And say individuals here or there, but the truth of the matter is it's going to, the thing that I feel best about, and I think that I know that the entire program and the guys within that locker room feel the best about us. I think just, what we have as a group, and whether everybody's seen it yet or hasn't seen it yet, whether it's game 1 or game 2, I just think that the biggest difference is, hey, there's some different mentality of the things that we can do and what we know we need to do. And I think that's where it's got to kind of start. Is there some different spots and positions? Yes. I've said it, multiple times. I think that, for the most part, I think we're in a better place at every position. I think obviously the depth on the offensive line is the one spot that, that continues to, be an issue or stand out a little bit to you. But as a whole and as a team, I think where we are and the things that we're doing, I think that's where everything's got to start.